So this is the second presentation that we're calling Iceland, Ascension, and Creation. So let me get things going here. Okay. So, how did Iceland become a part of our sabbatical pilgrimage? Well, the truth of the matter is we simply ended up flying Icelandic Air, and they offered a special allowance that gave us 2 days in Iceland at a reduced price. Knowing very little about Iceland, we saw it as a way to slow down, deal with jet lag, and prepare ourselves for the adventures in the 13 weeks of pilgrimage that followed. Iceland was formed from volcanic eruptions along the mid-Atlantic ridge, which separates the Eurasia and the American tectonic plates as they move apart. Iceland is the only place on that ridge where you can stand on the ridge in dry land. But because of the ridge, Iceland has a great deal of volcanic and seismic activities and is also well known for its many glaciers, including the largest glacier in Europe. Iceland was still uninhabited long after the rest of Western Europe had been settled. Their recorded history began with the settlement by the Viking explorers and their slaves from the east, particularly Norway, and the British Isles in the 9th century. Settlement has usually been dated back to 874. However, archaeological evidence now indicates that Celtic monks from Ireland, known as the Pepar, had settled Iceland before that date. And more interestingly, the monks ostensibly left Iceland because they didn't want to live among the pagan Norse who were settling there. Now, the first permanent settler in Iceland is considered to have been a Norwegian chieftain and his wife. And legend has it he threw 2 carved pillars overboard as he neared land, vowing to settle wherever they landed. He then sailed along the coast until the pillars were found in the southwestern peninsula. He settled there with his family around 874 in a place he named Reykjavik, which means smoke cove, probably from the geothermal steam rising from the earth. Many more Norse chiefmen, their families, and slaves settled all the habitable areas of the island in the next decades. In 930, the ruling chiefs established an assembly called the Althing. This was a parliament convened every summer at Thingvellir, where representative chieftains amended laws, settled disputes, appointed juries to judge lawsuits, and in the center, as in the picture here, there was a law rock known as the Logberg in the middle of the assembly. The Althing is said to be the world's oldest existing parliament that still meets. And importantly for that time, there was no central executive power, and therefore the laws were enforced only by the people. Originally settled mostly by Norwegians, Iceland eventually became part of Denmark. The original settlers worshiped the Norse gods of Odin, Thor, Freyr, and Freyja. Pressure mounted as the rest of Europe Christianized. And in 1000, the Althing appointed a chieftain to make the decision on Christian conversion. It was decided to convert the country to Christianity, but to also allow the pagans to continue to worship privately. In the 20th century, Iceland gained sovereignty after World War I, becoming the Kingdom of Iceland in 1918. Iceland shared the Danish monarchy until World War II. Although Iceland was neutral in the Second World War, the United Kingdom invaded and peacefully occupied it in 1940 to forestall Nazi occupation after Denmark was overrun by the German Wehrmacht. Due to the island's strategic position in the North Atlantic, the Allies occupied the island until the end of the war, with the United States taking over occupation duties from the British in 1941. Following the Second World War, Iceland was a founding member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and joined the United Nations 1 year after its establishment. On May 25th, 2017, after an overnight flight, we arrived in Iceland in the morning of Ascension Day. We took a shuttle bus into Reykjavik. Finding our hotel, we got a bit of rest and later went out for a walk to see the city. We found the Östervaller, East Field, which was so named when Reykjavik was primarily a farm. Over time, the use of the Östervaller has changed and it's now a public green space with public art like this statue and gardens in the city center. Across the bay were a number of picturesque houses. In 1790, the Reykjavik Cathedral was built at the edge of the Östervaller. And in 1931, a statue of Jan Sigurðsson, a leader of Iceland's 19th century independence movement, was erected next to the cathedral. Nearby, we happened to see a poster for an Ascension Day concert at the Hallgrímskirkja churches. Ascension Day in Iceland is a national holiday. Walking up the street to the church, we saw interesting architecture. A large number of tourist-oriented shops along the streets, most of which were closed. And one shop in particular attracted visitors, at least to the exterior, with life-size cloth sculptures, which seemed to be a picture-taking must for most visitors, obviously including us. The Hallgrímskirkja is a landmark that can be seen throughout the city. The church was designed by the state architect in 1937. He is said to have designed it to resemble the rocks, mountains, and glaciers of Iceland's landscape. Construction began in 1945 and was completed in 1986. Near this church is a statue of explorer Leif Erikson, and the statue itself, we discovered, was a gift to Iceland from the people of the United States. The interior, whoops, one too many there. The interior, the interior is an impressive modern design. The Hallgrímskirkja is a Lutheran church and is the largest in the city. It has a significant music program with 2 choirs, a marvelous organ, and frequent public offerings. The concert was by the Schola Cantorum, which has traveled widely in Europe and produced a CD of Icelandic a cappella choir music that Nancy calls hauntingly beautiful. The concert was comprised of contemporary and primarily Iceland or Nordic composers. The concert was simply the breathtaking sound of a cappella music resounding through this cavernous space. Walking back to our hotel, we saw an art exhibit in one of the streets of preschool children drawings of the Hallgrímskirkja. The next day, we went in different directions, as Nancy took an excursion to see some of the natural wonders of this volcanic island. I stayed in the city primarily to get over jet lag and not to be confined on a bus all day. So I did more urban sightseeing. I returned to the Roman Catholic Cathedral and discovered that there would be an organ concert by a German organist later in the afternoon. So heading off to a restaurant for lunch, I came across another piece of public art called the Water Carrier, which was sculpted in 1937 to honor all of the women who had daily carried water from the town pump to their homes in the many, many years before the city water system was installed. Returning to the Domkirchen, I found it to be a small but beautifully appointed church. I especially liked the sculpted baptismal font and the painting of the resurrected Christ behind the altar. The organ was in the rear choir balcony. The concert program was mostly Baroque and 19th century composers. A delightful program and another instance of an unexpected gift of music that ended up being an unplanned addition in many places to our pilgrimage. Nancy had meanwhile joined the Icelandic nature tour. Departing from the city, Nancy began to quickly appreciate the unique beauty of this land. The first stop was Thingvellir, the national park and UNESCO World Heritage Site. It ranks as Iceland's most important site when it comes to history and geology because it was in this physical location where the Vikings established that first parliament. In the middle of the park valley, there is a church and rectory seen here. And it's there because the church predates the area that was turned into a national park. The park sits in a rift valley caused by the separation of the tectonic plates, and Nancy was able to walk up to the point at which the plates closely abut one another, seen in this visible rift. Thingvellir is a natural treasure with its vast lava fields and rivers leading into Iceland's largest lake. The next stop was at the geyser area, which offered steam vents, bubbling mud pits, hot ponds, and magnificent colors. And the highlight of the site was the Stroker geyser. Stroker performs natural and powerful eruptions spouting water and steam some 20 meters up about every 10 minutes. The Great Geyser in Iceland has been active for approximately 10,000 years and was the first geyser known to Western man. Leaving the park, Nancy saw these Icelandic ponies. They are small, sturdy animals. In fact, Nancy was taller than they were. The last stop was Gullfoss, Golden Falls. Gullfoss is one of Iceland's most majestic waterfalls. The water originates in a glacier and gets its name from the golden hue it gives off as it tumbles downward into the canyon. The waterfall drops down a 105-foot crevice in 2 stages. It can be viewed from several locations. And walking down a staircase, the waterfall viewed from this observation point seems to vanish into the earth. Nancy returned to Reykjavik, awed by the majestic power in the creation of this planet, our island home. The next time we'll be looking at Aberdeen, Scotland, where America's first bishop was consecrated, and also find a visit to Scotland's oldest jail and the Dunatar Castle.